So it's 12:02. We're gonna go ahead, get rocking and rolling here. Got about 20 folks. So it's a good start. We'll get some stragglers in here over the next few minutes. For those of you that are new, like someone just mentioned down there, this is Derby City Agile Meetup Group. We're based out of Louisville, Kentucky. Pre-COVID, we used to do these just locally, somewhere at a nice meetup, and since then we've gone virtual and got folks from all over the world to join, especially thanks to great guests like Damon that we have today. So we're going to continue to do that, continue to breach that horizon of Agile across the world. So today, I'll let Anna introduce our speaker, but there will be a recording that will be shared on the Meetup group and most likely myself, Anna, or Damon's LinkedIn as well. And then if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in chat. Damon's pretty good about trying to fill them into his presentation, but sometimes we may not get to them, and we'll try to do a little Q&A at the end if there's anything that's necessary there. So Anna, you want to go ahead and give out the intro?
Oh, thank you, Jay, for passing it over. Hi, everyone. I'm Anna Kepshire. I own KEP Training. And two things that we're going to share at the very end of this will be, one, the Derby City Agile Conference, the Open Space Conference, and a link to Damon's classes that are going to be coming up. We have one in October and some in December, and we're going to share that link as well. But first of all, I'd love to introduce Damon Poole. Damon is amazing. He is an IC Agile coach. He's also an international coach for agility. He's written a book. He is like the man when it comes to coaching. So I don't think there's a more well-liked individual when it comes to agility and coaching. And he's always fun. He always delivers. So without further ado, Damon, you know I love you. I'm going to hand over the torch. Ta-da!
No pressure. Thanks for that build-up. Well, I'll see what I can do. Awesome. All right, so here we go. So we're going to be talking about how to practice coaching in your everyday conversations. Now, there's a lot of different parts of coaching, so I don't necessarily mean full-on coaching. We don't want to do full-on coaching without somebody's permission. That can feel manipulative, so I'm not saying that. But there's a lot of coaching that we can practice in our regular, everyday conversations. And as we practice that in our regular, everyday conversations, it will actually also bleed over into our coaching. Right, so it'll make our coaching better. It goes in both directions, right? So it'll make both better. Okay, blah blah blah. I already did that. So I want to be clear first. This can be a little confusing. Sometimes it sounds like what I'm saying is if you share expertise with somebody, you're a bad coach, right? You failed in some way. You should have asked a question that a person that has no knowledge of Kanban will suddenly invent it in their head. I don't know how that's possible, right? So as an Agile coach, within the role of Agile coach, and by coach, I mean, official Agile coach, Scrum Master, RTE, somebody that's bringing Agile to more people, right? I'm going to call that an Agile coach as opposed to naming all the roles all the time. But in that role, for sure, you are going to share Agile expertise with people. There's a lot of ways to share your expertise. There's teaching, there's mentoring, there's just plain sharing it. There's providing feedback, there's offering opinions, and then there's even influence. Or you might think, well, wait, I thought as a coach, one of the things we're supposed to do is influence. Why is that over on the expertise side as opposed to like a coaching skill? That seems confusing. Well, why would you be trying to influence somebody as an Agile coach? Because you're thinking that direction, in your expert opinion, is good for them from an Agile perspective. So even influencing is considered part of Agile expertise. So helping people understand about SAFe, or I always want to say Lexus, but Nexus, Scrum at Scale, whatever it is, Kanban, XP, that's all Agile expertise, right? If you're sharing your opinion on that, anything that's Agile expertise. And there's nothing wrong with that. For sure, you're going to do that. Let's look at some of the other things out there, though. So everything on the right side, that's Agile expertise. Everything on the left is complete absence of Agile expertise. And you need both, right? Sometimes you're going to be doing what's on the right, sometimes on the left. I don't really make a distinction between coaching and facilitation anymore. They're pretty much the exact same things. Everything you know about facilitation, you can apply when you're coaching. Everything you apply when you think of coaching, you can apply when you're facilitating. There's a small difference, which I'm really not going to harp on here, but that's who set the agenda, and that's really it. Is there a who set the agenda and what's the end goal? That's really the only difference, but we're not going to really look at that today. So coaching, facilitation, really the same thing. There are skills that are specific to coaching. I'm not saying this is everything that's in coaching, but these are the specific skills. There's a few more, but things like creating a coaching agreement. Like if you're hanging out with your mom, you're not going to say, all right, hey mom, so what are your expectations for this conversation? No, you're not going to do that, right? That would be weird. Actually, for my mom, she would take it in stride, but whatever, she's used to me. Asking powerful questions. You wouldn't go up to a stranger and say, oh, okay, so what would you do if you had a magic wand? Or what would your future self say to you? That would probably be the end of the conversation. Or they'd say, well, this is a very amusing person. Oh, let's see what other weird things they do. Even if you're in the work environment and you are, the named coach for a team, I'm sure you've asked a powerful question and had the person go, yeah, anyway, so I would really like you to help me with my problem that I have. Or what is this, therapy? Right, so those are skills that are specific to coaching that you would not use outside of a coaching context. And it does take a skill to use them because they can land completely flat. Now, they are not the only things that are useful in coaching. Here's a whole bunch of skills that are absolutely part of coaching, but they are not specific to coaching. Right, so using your emotional intelligence, you're in a conversation and you realize, oh, actually, this person has lost interest in this conversation. I need to end the conversation or figure out what they'd really like to talk about. Emotional intelligence, right? If you want to have a good conversation with people, you kind of got to gauge, what's going on. However, the best coaches are fantastic at all of these things. Right, so sometimes we run into somebody and we say, oh, wow, you're sort of a natural coach, right? Because they happen to be good at these things. Doesn't necessarily mean they had coaching training, but part of coach training is seeing where we are with these things and moving further forward on them. Right? And wherever you are today, myself included, we could always go further. Right? There's always more to learn. So we're going to focus on these, the skills involved in everyday conversations, because really it is at least a third of the skill set of a truly great Agile coach. All right, so let me just stop there for a moment and ask if there's any questions. I might not be able to get to all of them right away, or I might say, oh, we're going to cover that in a moment. But I wonder if anything that I've talked about so far has just popped up with a question in your mind or something that you'd like to share. Okay, on we go. So why do we even need coaching? And by coaching, I don't mean advice. I don't mean anything related to Agile or expertise. For sure, that's part of being an Agile coach. But I mean the specific part of coaching, helping a person think through, what are they running into so they can come up with, how am I going to get myself out of this? Right, so we give them some advice, or you should use work in progress limits or whatever. And they go, I've never used those before. And it sounds interesting, but I don't think I'm ready to use that yet. But I still need to solve my problem. Or that sounds interesting, but I'm not sure how to use that in my specific situation, which I am in. You're really not, right? As the coach, we're really not in their shoes. We're not accountable to whatever issue that they're trying to solve. They are. So we get stuck as people. And it's not that we need the advice, it's we need to figure out, how am I going to get through this thing that's bothering me, right? You might be bothered by it too as the coach, but it's bothering me as the coachee. So we get stuck. And when you get stuck, forget about Agile, forget about work for a minute. What do? You generally reach out to another person. Maybe you go for a walk or something, but if you're still stuck, that's not going to help. So you reach out to another person and say, oh, I don't know what to do here. I could do this, I could do that. It's driving me crazy. And what kind of person do you reach out to? Right? Do you reach out to the person on the left, or one of the people on the left, or one of the people on the right? I don't think I want to talk to any of the people, either of the people on the right. I don't know about you. That doesn't look like a fun time. Maybe they're arguing with me. And I reached out for help and you're arguing with me. What's that all about? Right? So what kind of person do you reach out to? Hopefully a person that's going to be supportive as opposed to unsupportive. So what does it mean to be supportive? Because that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today and do a little practice on. Well, here's a list of things to consider. Right? And there's more, but these are some things to consider. Right? So somebody that you trust, you go to them and you haven't seen them in a while, and you say, oh, I got this thing and I could really use your help. And they go, okay, so what's the problem? And you're like, gosh, I haven't seen you in a while. It's good to see you. How have you been? Right? So establishing that rapport, reminding the other person that, hey, I'm a wonderful person to hang out with, and I'm gonna be here for you. Right? I'm not just trying to brush you off or get to the solution right away. I want to hear what's on your mind. Right? So building rapport is a skill set. Being what was I talking about? Being present is an important skill, right? As opposed to getting distracted. Now, it's not always as obvious as that we've been distracted, but you can see the screen flashing on a person's face on Zoom, and you know that they're looking at Facebook or some other thing that has nothing to do with you. You know they're not really listening, right? So that's a skill, and it's hard to resist those distractions, but it is a skill, right? So I'm not going to go through all these, but there are a lot of skills here. You might not think of them as coaching specific skills, but ask yourself, if you have the choice between two coaches or any number of coaches on a spectrum of coaching, and on the left side, they're terrible at all these things listed. And on the right side, they're just amazing at all the skills listed. Where on that spectrum would you want to be, or would you want your coach to be? I'm going to guess as many of these things as that they're good at, the better. Right? That's the person you would seek out if you had such a person like that you could talk to. Right? And let's imagine that they both have the same level of Agile or work-related knowledge. Right? The more of these skills that they have, the more likely that they're going to reach out to that person, or that you are going to. So the more that we can be good at these, the better off we're going to be as a coach. Right? Simple example. If a person needs to tell you something that's a little awkward, or that they feel like, I shouldn't have to ask this, or I'm showing that I don't know something. If they need to share that in order to figure out how are they going to move forward, and they don't feel comfortable, then they're not going to share that, and you're not going to be able to help them. All right. So these skills really are very important, because the things that we get stuck on generally are things that we need help on. And most people don't really want to reach out for help unless they have to. So then there's these behaviors. I'm not saying you should be good at these. I'm saying you should be good at avoiding these things, right? So just look through this list and think about, how am I at these, right? I don't mean me, but I mean, you. Ask yourself, how are you at these things? There are two on here that this group, and I include myself, we struggle with the most. I'll let you just guess what they are. They're the last two. Because generally, that's what we're used to doing most of the time. And people want us to do those things. And they're good, sure. But actually, it says unsolicited. Right? Unsolicited. That's the problem. And attached to a specific solution. Right? So we may become attached to something. We think it's the best thing for them, but we're not really listening to what they really need. And so that's not going to help. Right? So I'm not accusing anybody. I have that issue too. Those are the two top issues that we have and need to struggle with and get better at. Right? So this is a big list. It's not the complete list, but the better we are at resisting these things, the more likely we are that we're going to help somebody when they're stuck. right? Again, think of, get two coaches, they're equally knowledgeable, maybe they're twins, you can't tell them apart. And one of them, when you interact with them, have a lot of these behaviors, and the other one has fewer of them. Which one would you want to interact with? Interrupting, just to give you an example of how subtle this can get. Interrupting here, I don't just mean speaking after I finish the sentence, right? And not interrupting me, or not saying anything till I get to the end of the sentence. I also mean not interrupting me at the end of this sentence because of something I'm doing. I'm still thinking. So if you start talking, you're interrupting my train of thought, right? Even that we don't want to interrupt. And it's so hard, right? They stop talking. I can talk now. Nope, not if they're doing this. Because when we're in that coaching place, we want them to do that. That's exactly what we're trying to get them to do. We don't want to interrupt that. That's fantastic. Okay, so we're going to do an exercise now, which I'm going to try a new variation of this on with you, not on you, I guess. I'm going to experiment. I guess I am experimenting on you, but anyway, it's going to be fun. So what I used to do is I would say, this is going to be a little awkward, but humor me. And people will be like, oh, that's what's going on. You do something weird. No, I'm not going to do anything weird, especially now. So I'm going to tell you a story. And then at the end of this story, which will be short, I want you to raise your hand. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand, your electronic hand or your physical hand, whichever, if you believe, after I finish the story, that you could retell that story at a pretty high level, right? The highlights, not every little detail. And it's going to be a slightly sad story. I apologize in advance for that. But so I'm going to tell a story. It'll only be about 2 minutes long. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you believe that you could retell that story. Okay? So here we go. When I was a kid, when I was about 8 years old, I had a dog, and he was just the best dog ever. We would go on all these adventures. We had so much fun, and he was a dog, right? He'd jump up on me, lick my face, wag his tail, all this kind of stuff. And one of the best things was, I was 8 when I got off the school bus, which was not really close to my house, actually. He would be there waiting for me, and I'd show up and he'd be like, hey, what adventure are we going on today? Until one day he wasn't there, and we never saw him again.
Oh.
What I realized, though, was I was going to focus on all the good things that had happened, as opposed to thinking about how I missed him and how horrible it was, and what happened to him, all that sort of thing. And then fast forward to when I was a young adult, I lost a close friend, and I was able to think back on that experience of my dog to manage my way through that grief. That's my story. Okay, so now I want you to raise your hand either physically or electronically to indicate that you believe you could retell the highlights of that story. All right, so go ahead and raise your physical or electronic hand if you believe so. Princess, I cannot tell if you're raising your hand or just, okay.
From my understanding about the story is like, you're trying to, should I just tell the story?
Oh, you don't have to tell the story. I'm just interested if you believe that you could retell the story if asked.
I can only just give some highlights about the story.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're missing, there's somebody there all the time, and at the time the person was no longer there. I'm just putting
I'm sorry. You don't have to share it. I just meant, could you? Yes or no. So it sounds like the answer is yes. So awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. That was the whole point of that exercise. And so what I wanted to show you is that all the people that raised their hand, and I don't know about the rest of the people, maybe they didn't want to raise their hand or whatever, but a majority of the people did raise their hand, which you can lower now if you like. either physically or electronically. And what that shows is that you do have the skills of presence and listening and not being distracted and being in the moment. The question is, can you do it on demand, right? So we can get distracted and all that sort of thing. But hopefully that showed you do actually have that skill to a very high degree when you intentionally say to yourself, I need to pay attention as though I'm going to be asked to retell whatever I'm listening to. It's kind of like going to the movies, right? You go to the movie, you don't take notes, right? You just pay attention. You wanted to be there. You're intending to pay attention. So it's the same thing. All right, so that's one of the skills that I wanted to introduce you to, or a host of skills I wanted to introduce you to or reintroduce you to, and that hopefully you'll use in some of the breakouts. Yes, Anna, it looked like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, so we talked about being present. So like for me, obviously we all know, if you follow me, I'm a huge dog lover. So do you think because you started with a dog and everybody loves dog, that people were more present because they like the topic, as opposed to if you started with something that?
Good question. So I have about 5 different stories that I rotate through because I really can't tell that dog story every time, or I would lose it, because it does actually almost bring me to tears. But the response is generally the same regardless of the content.
Okay, great. Thank you.
It's the challenge to be able to say, yes, I could raise my hand at the end, that is actually what keeps people, paying attention. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about, which is related to coaching and some skills, are, this may seem obvious, especially in the United States over the last few years, but we're all different and unique. People might use different words there, but we're all different and unique in a lot of different ways. And so, our values, our habits, our routines, our philosophy of life, our mental models of things, our resources, I'm not going to go all the way around. But if you look at all these things, you can think of like, wow, yes, I am different than other people that I know on these things, and they're different. Wow, that is a lot of ways to be different. What does this have to do with anything? It has to do with how we provide knowledge, expertise, and advice, and staying away from that unsolicited part. So I want you to think about a couple of different examples, and we'll see how this group is different. So stories, I know this never happens to the teams that you work on, but let's imagine, fantasize, we're working with a team where the stories keep moving to the next sprint after sprint. I know, totally ridiculous, but I want you to think, which of these things would you want to do if it was up to you? Split stories, work on getting better at estimates, or the PO goes to PO school. All right. So I'm going to give you a choice. Just raise your hand for one, and then, let's do physical hands. That probably makes it easier. I guess, digital hands as well, but then drop it at the end, or drop it for each one. So raise your hand if you would do A, split stories in this situation, and you can only raise your hand for one. Okay, we got one person there, a couple people, 3 people. If you would do, okay, so drop your hands, raise your hand if you would help the team work on getting better at estimating. Okay, got a few people for that. All right, drop your hands. Raise your hand if you would want the PO to go to the PO to go to training for the PO. Who would want that one? Oh, that's a lot of people. Yeah, it's interesting. Side note, when I asked the question, what percentage of the people in your organization that should have PO training do have PO training, that's a very depressing answer. So you're not alone. That's the upshot. All right, so I'm actually not going to do the same thing for each of these, just in the interest of time, so we can have more discussion, more activities. But I'm just going to show you some other things to think about. Right, the EVP demands 10% increase in delivery. Again, I know that never happens in your organization, but imagine some other organization where it happens. Which thing would you be wanting to do if it was up to you? Generally, different people have different answers. And then finally, there's a company crisis. What would you want to do if it was up to you? So if we think back to the first question when people raise their hands for different things, it means that if you were coaching somebody on that, you would gravitate towards the one that you raised your hand on, but that doesn't mean that they would, given those choices and understanding them. We need to figure out how to help them choose the one, because these are all pretty valid things to do, choose the one that's going to work for them that they feel comfortable with. Right? A simple example that I think most of us can relate to is work in progress limits. I don't know about you, but many organizations, when I talk about the benefits of that, they go, whoa, 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 right? They're not really listening. I don't think you understand. We need to do more work. We can't slow down. I'm not saying slow down. Yeah, we're not doing that. Or when they understand it, they say, wow, that makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't know how that's going to work out. Right? So how can we help them get to that point where they're comfortable? Just because we are doesn't mean that they are. So towards this end, we're gonna practice. I'm gonna put you into either pairs or triads. We'll see how it works. One person is going to be talking about what's going on with them, some challenge or something like that. And then one other person is going to be just keeping the conversation moving forward. And one of the things you can do is use supportive questions. That's a term I made up. You know, it's very clever. It's patented. Supportive questions. It's a subset of powerful questions. You can't use powerful questions in everyday conversations without permission. But what you can do is a subset of it. You don't have to ask somebody, would you mind if I ask questions that are related to what the heck you're talking about? They'd be like, well, I hope you do that all the time. Would you mind if I ask short questions and I stay on a single topic and I'm clear? You don't have to ask for permission. Would you mind if I ask questions that allow you to respond in any way? Right? You don't have to ask for permission. So a subset of powerful questions are questions that are connected to what the person's saying, short, singular topic, clear, open, and don't funnel down to a yes, no, aren't trying to lead the person somewhere, and are not you thinking out loud so that you can get to that point. If you're a think out loud person, that's okay, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that. But we want to lean towards thinking things through and then expressing them. So if you want to write down some notes, because I'm going to have you practice this now, if you want to write down some notes, you can, connected, short, one topic, clear, open, something like that. Feel free. If you're feeling like I ain't got this, then that's okay too. All right. So here's what I want you to do. You might be in a group of 2 or 3 people. If there's 3 people, then one will be the person with the issue, not necessarily coachee, just a regular old person that wants to talk to somebody. I'm not going to think of it as coach and coachee. And then another person that is being the thinking partner, right? Just mostly listening. And here's the rules. I know this is going to be hard. I'm constraining you to just a few things. If you're the person that's the thinking partner, you're going to say as little as possible, right? If you say absolutely nothing and the whole time the person is talking, that would be like just amazing, right? I'll give you a gold star. I think it's unlikely. Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to use little nudges like, oh, I see. Okay. Is there more to this story? Stuff like that, nudges. No matter what you do, you cannot provide any information. Even if you're an expert on the topic, this is a constraint, it's just practicing this, and it's going to be hard. You cannot provide any information at all. So if you say, oh, have you tried moving the stand-up time? That's providing information. You're providing the idea that maybe moving the stand-up time would help. No can do. Now, on the other side, when you're bringing a problem, remember that the person is constrained to this, right? You're just reaching out to somebody that is not going to provide you any knowledge on whatever your problem is, but will help you think through the problem, right? So that's how I want you to think of your thinking partner. If there's a third or even a fourth person there, we'll just be observers. So choose the 2 people, thinking partner and person with the issue, and then everybody else will be observers. Then we'll come back and debrief. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes for this activity. If you want to ask a question, that's perfectly okay, but it should still be like a nudge, something to just nudge the person's thinking. They get stuck and you think, and you might ask, oh, well, what else could you do? Or what seems to be the main issue? Or what might help the most here, or anything that occurs to you. Just want to try to provide as little information as possible. That you're not the expert on whatever the topic is, even if you are. For the person that is bringing the challenge or the problem, whatever, share something that is a current unsolved issue, right? Not a scenario from the past, not something that somebody else is experiencing, something that's real for you, safe for work, please, and that you're thinking about but have not yet resolved. And you just want somebody to talk to, right? That's all we're going to do. Okay, so I'm going to break you up now into groups.
Meeting is being recorded.
Okay, welcome back.
We need more time. Why?
Just gonna mute all there for a moment. If you need to speak, come on, feel free to come off mute, but I just want to get the debriefing going here. So welcome back. I hope you had some fun there. I want to set the context that I'm not suggesting that you do what I just had you do in general, right? I'm not saying constrain yourself in general, but I wanted you to get the experience of what that's like to hold back in some areas, to only do things in a certain way. And that is actually when it's the right, when it's the right time, which is not always the right time, that is something that you would do as part of your coaching toolkit. And you can practice that anytime, right? You can decide in this conversation with this other person, I'm going to let them do all the talking just to practice it. I'm going to hold back my opinion just to practice it, because, Lord knows we all need some practice on that. So it doesn't have to be in a coaching specific situation. It could be any time. Now, it may be that you try practicing some of that and your friend says, are you okay? You seem like unresponsive today. So, okay, right. Maybe you went too far. Anyway, so that was a little context, and I'd like to give some experience. I'd like to get some thoughts on that experience. What was interesting for you? What did you notice you had trouble with? What was different? What was interesting? What was maybe an aha moment for you? Not in the content itself, but in trying to do some of those things, like only ask open-ended questions, saying as little as possible, just using nudges. All right, so what were some experiences? Jim, I noticed you just came off mute. What's on your mind?
I found it very hard. I think one of my to be self-aware and have self-mastery is important for a coach. And I've known for some time that I tend to slip into teaching stance very quickly and very permanently. So an exercise like this was very difficult for me because I either wanted to slip into problem solving or teaching, one of those two stances rather than a listening stance. And it was instructive every time I do something like this. It helps my muscle memory to not jump in and not either become pedantic or just overbearing, not in a bad way, but not in a facilitative coaching way too. So I found it, it was a very difficult exercise, but I get a lot out of it.
Awesome. Now, you use the word muscle in terms of muscle memory. I see you, Eileen, just a moment. In terms of muscle memory, one of the ways that I like to think about this is something you can practice anytime. And it's just like, and I'm not a weightlifter, but it's kind of like lifting weights. Like when you start out, you can lift a certain number of pounds, and then you do it some more and you can lift more, right? And you're not always going to need those muscles, but they're there when you need them. The other way you can use this is to do something like this on your own, just at any time, see how it goes and realize, oh, it still was, I had to resist, but it was easier. Right. So I'm building that skill, or gosh, it's just as hard as ever. I need to practice this some more. Eileen, what's on your mind?
Well, as we were doing this and I agree, it's very difficult to hold back from your natural tendency to solve a problem. I was just wondering how the person with the issue is reacting to a reticence. And are they getting more frustrated, or are they in the background, getting the problem resolved on their own. I wondered what kind of reaction did most people have on that side of the fence? Because I would think, to me, it would be very frustrating because I want a suggestion when I have a problem. I want, how
Sure,
would you do it? And
absolutely.
we're saying, don't offer up. Initially, work them through the thought process. So I was just curious what kind of feedback
Sure.
you've gotten because you're more experienced with
Sure,
this.
absolutely. So if somebody wants to share a thought on that, feel free to put it in the comments and I'll give you my thought, which is this was an exercise. And I'm
Mhm.
not suggesting that we, hold back our thoughts when they're going to be useful. But what I am suggesting is that we should consciously look at it and see if we are leaping to offer it before it's actually been asked for. Right. So we just want to monitor that. Like, are we, one way to think about it is, ooh, I really want to, switch lanes here. And there's cars in the way. It's not the right time to switch lanes right now. Right. So that's really what it's all about. We don't want to torture people, but we also don't want to, jump ahead and say, here's what you should do when they're like, well, I didn't really ask. Right. Okay.
Maybe they want they want someone
Maybe
to
they
listen
do.
to them think through
Yeah.
it. That makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. Thanks.
You're welcome. And the simplest way is just to ask. One of the things I like to do at the beginning is say, I know that you're probably looking for my opinion here and I'm happy to offer it. So when we get to that point where you're thinking, okay, now's the time, just reach out and I'll be happy to share my thoughts. Now you've given them the control of that button and it can be like, oh, I want to push the button. Why aren't they asking? But, we want to give them the control. Elliot, what's on your mind? How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome, Damon. Thanks. Yeah, let me put my hand down. That gets tiring to keep that up all the time. No. As a follow-on to the present commentary, I was just kind of curious as to potential nuances, right? I know we're talking about everyday conversations, and we're not necessarily talking workplace conversations. But someone might feel that unless they bring a specific question to you, they can't, right? In other words, they feel like they need to bring a question when actually what they want is something other than that. And I'm wondering what maybe your experience might have been in a connection that's a little bit more nuanced or subtle than just what we're going to do or our intention, but kind of discovering what their real intention is in opening a conversation.
Sure, absolutely. So one thing, just to go back, you didn't ask this question directly, but just on the topic of everyday conversations and this overall session that we're in right now, the idea here is that you can, I'm just showing how you can practice things that are useful in coaching in your everyday conversations, whether it's at work or not. But where you would use what we're doing here is generally, I'm saying, the benefit would be to get your coaching to that next level. As far as understanding the person's intent, I think, no matter what, we want to have that coaching mindset of asking them, right? Even if we know that they need to do something, right? Even if I think that, it's like, hey, Elliot, I'm a door color expert and really that door should be blue. So it's like, really? I didn't expect I was going to wake up this morning. You're going to tell me my door should be blue. But maybe I, as a door color expert, am thinking, well, actually blue would work better there. I'm not a door color expert, by the way, spoiler alert. And so I say, oh, hey, Elliot, I happen to be a door color expert and I have some thoughts on your door if you're interested. And you didn't wake up this morning thinking that you wanted that, but you're like, oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, I would love to hear that. Tell me your thoughts, right? So now I have found a way to ask for permission to share something that I wanted to share with you. And if we go to an Agile team and we notice that they could be doing something better, and we say, oh, I think you could be doing that better. It may be just like, me coming into your house and saying, ooh, you need to remodel your kitchen or change the color of your door. It's like, I'm sorry, that's really cool. And I love that you had that thought, but I'm not looking to remodel.
Oh, geez, I
so-
knew that already, Damon. But anyway,
Yeah.
thanks.
So if we find people resisting us, it means that they're not interested, right? And we need to find something that they are interested in. And I know that was a little bit beyond what you were asking, but that's what came out.
No, great
Okay,
food for thought. Thank you.
Sure. All right. So who else had a thought about that experience? Something that they realized, or a question, or something that came out of that experience? I see one person raising their hand, but I'm trying to ignore that for the moment. Was there anybody else that had a question or something that they'd like to share? Okay, so we'll go to Miriam and then we'll get to you, Anna. Don't you worry. All right, Miriam, what's on your mind?
So in our group, there was some deciding issue as to who is going to be the thinking partner. We did take some time. And so I'm not in Agile or Scrum. So I felt really out of my comfort zone to be the thinking partner, but then I decided to go ahead anyways, thinking that, trust the process, that you don't have to be if you're not a subject matter expert and you need to speak to somebody, you need to be useful, then how would it be? So the time limit was small, and I did pay attention, like how you mentioned, right? If I have to retell the story, how would I? But having said that, I felt completely out of my comfort zone, and I'm still kind of thinking, but the conversation didn't go far, and I could listen, but there were a lot of words that he probably used to describe the situation, which were very new to me. So those were some of the observations, but then the follow-up question of how that makes him feel, by then the time was up and we came back to the main room.
Okay. Well, thanks for your bravery. And, okay, so we had a limited time here. And, sorry about that. But you can practice this, outside of this. You can, find somebody and say, hey, I'd like to try this, and set whatever time you'd like. And that's something that I would encourage everybody to do, is to practice this to the extent that you'd like to go even further. Okay, so I said I'd do Anna, and then we'll go to Dave after that. And it looks like we're not going to do the next exercise, so that's fine. I'll give it to you as a homework assignment that you can take or not. But the discussion is wonderful, and I'd much rather have the discussion. Anna, what's on your mind?
Oh, well, I was just going to say, as somebody with a problem, it was really hard when they asked questions to sit and not speak. So that's all I had. I didn't have spectacular. Go ahead. Skip me. Go ahead.
Who raise your hand
Which
if
is very
anybody's
hard.
surprised? Is anybody surprised? No, nobody's raising their hand. Okay. Anna, we love you. You're wonderful. Dave, what's on your mind?
Sure. Just quickly, in the subject of presence, the person who was my thinking partner was not on video, and I'm sure there are all sorts of legitimate reasons for that, but that made it hard to feel a connection.
It's an interesting challenge. Not everybody wants to be on camera, and that's like a whole topic. One of the things we can do as the coach, though, is to model that, just like you are being on camera, and we can encourage people to participate in a lot of different ways, right? So whether it's video, audio, chat, whiteboard, there's a lot of opportunities out there. One of the reasons, though, that people are perhaps not on video is that maybe they feel uncomfortable, right? This is a big group, but even one-on-one or in a team, maybe they feel uncomfortable. And so some of the things, and I know you know this, but thanks for bringing up the point. Dave and I, by the way, have known each other like forever. I won't even say how long. But finding a way to build that rapport, grow that trust, to get to the point where the person is comfortable, whether it's being on camera or participating in any way. Nice picture in the background, by the way. All right, who else has something that they'd like to share, or a thought, or a question? Okay, so I'm gonna, oh yeah, Princess, go ahead.
I just want to know because, like my group, like I said, the guy was trying to say something about his work, but it's very hard for me to not give the solution. So like I was just, though I'm the one listening, but I was just feeling like I just have to say something, and it's very hard for me to just hold my like my thoughts on how to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's every single person that is in the role of Agile Coach, Scrum Master, RTE, what have you, has that problem. You're not alone, so don't worry about it. It's just a question of building up that skill. It's really a skill, right? I'm not saying you're unskilled, right? It's building that skill, even further to the point where you are there to do whatever they need until that point when they really want that expertise, which is often not immediately. Right? I'm sure you've had the experience that somebody says, "Oh, I'm running into this issue, and I'd love your opinion." And then at the end of the conversation, you're like, "Every time I tried to give my opinion, they resisted it." And it's likely because they actually didn't want your opinion at all, other than, "Yes, I agree that you're brilliant, and that's a terrific thing, and I will also be happy to share the blame if it goes wrong with you." Right? That's what they're actually looking for. It happens, right? So we need to figure out what is it that they really want and how can we most help. And by the way, I'm not suggesting that you co-sign loans with anybody, which is really what people are often looking for. Can you go co-sign a line? Even speak co-sign a loan with me? No, I'm not going to do that. All right, so here is your homework assignment. Your mission, should you choose to accept it. If you want to take a screenshot here or make some notes or whatever, this is just ideas. And it is, consider doing an activity like this, where you choose a couple of the things from this list, right? It's actually two lists, but maybe one on the left, one on the right, two on the left, two on the right, whatever it is, and practice them in a conversation. Right, so focusing on the other person might be, they tell a story and you're tempted to tell a story, but instead you say, "Oh, that was really interesting. I'd love to hear more about that." Or there's multiple topics that come up and you say, "Oh, wow, that's really interesting what's going on with you. Sounds like there's a lot to talk about here. What would you like to talk about?" Right? Instead of saying, "Ooh," and continuing on one of the things that they brought up. Some of the stuff that we practiced. Look, this can be hard. I know that you are all completely non-critical. You never criticize anybody or judge them. I understand. But if we are thinking to ourselves, I'm going to pay attention to what I'm saying and my face and everything, my body language, to see if I am disagreeing or looking like, "Why would you do that?" Just be really aware of it. You might notice it in places that you don't expect, right? And you might decide to do it for a little bit and realize, actually, I did really well there. Okay, that's not something I need to spend a lot of time on. So there's a long list of things here that you might consider. And each of them, wherever you are, that's fantastic. But if you build up that skill, you will find that your coaching will be even better, because you'll hear more things that you weren't hearing before. People will tell you things that they weren't telling you before. They'll come back to you, for more. And one last thing I want to say is, very often when we're not sharing advice or solutions, we feel like, what the heck value are we even providing? But again, I want you to think back to when you run into a problem and you're stuck, like in your personal life, and you reach out to people, and there's two different people, and one is really good at all these things and the other's not so much. Which one are you more likely to reach out to? I would guess the people that are better at the things on the left and don't do the things on the right. That absolutely has value. We just don't necessarily acknowledge it. Okay, So that's what I wanted to present. I want to thank everybody for your participation, Anna and Jay for hosting and having me here, and see if there's any last questions or something that people would like to share.
Thank you so much, Damon. From Anna and myself, from Smart Data and Kept Training. Thank you all. I think Anna posted a couple of links into the chat, which you can also find most likely in the Meetup group, or if you go to kepttraining.com. You know, Anna and Damon do a lot of things together, put on a lot of classes. So if you were like, who's this Damon dude? I don't know him. I sort of liked this. I want to do a little more of this. Obviously, you can go there and visit. We do have a one-day conference coming up next Thursday for those of you that are in the Louisville area. It's an open space event. Just ignore the title. Just come and learn. That's what we're gonna do. So that link is in there as well. Recording will be posted on the Meetup group on LinkedIn, and I'll let Anna just her and her dog out us per use.
Okay, well, Ruby's here to let everyone know, to interrupt the conference, to let us know that we are out of time, and to thank everybody for joining, and to obviously thank Damon. And I put a little code in there for $50 off if you want to attend one of his classes as a thank you for attending our meetup session. And like Damon said, we have a conference. If you're close to Louisville, come. This is going to be spectacular. Everything that we've done has been very talked about, so I guarantee this is going to be an amazing learning opportunity. And thank you so much, and thank you for spending lunch with us, or if you're on the West Coast, your morning with us. Thank you, everybody. Thanks,
Thank you all so
Damon.
much.
Thanks so
Always
much,
fun,
all.
Damon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.